Hi class, welcome to week number 6 in Social Work 541. This week you have an assignment due, your Community Needs and Services Plan, which will be completed in your dyad. You'll be turning in one paper for each partner group. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes going over the components of this assignment just so everybody is clear. There are three different parts to the assignment. The first part is the community summary. This is pretty much the briefest part of your paper. You're going to provide a brief summary of your community and the problem you're targeting. You're not expected to provide another overview of the demographics and quality of life information for your community, but you're going to summarize the important components that are most relevant to the problem that you've presented and which lay the groundwork for how you're going to address it. So some of you provided an abstract of your paper. Some of you had conclusion paragraphs that were very strong, that kind of laid forward what it is that you're going to be addressing. Others of you might need to dig through your papers a little bit to really grasp the key components of the target problem that you're going to be addressing in this paper. The literature review might be one of the meatier portions of this paper for you. So the purpose of a literature review is to provide an overview of what research exists on your subject. It's intended to provide an idea of how your subject fits into the larger social work field of study. Basically, you're asking yourself and also asking the research body that's available, what does the research have to say about my subject? You're going to be looking at scholarly articles, journals, other reputable research sources. I know this is sometimes challenging when we get into the habit of always using kind of the most readily available internet sources, but here it'll be a challenge to try to find additional research that has been done. A lot of you have topics that have been widely studied by social work, by sociology, by psychology, by other areas that are related to social work. And it would be good to find some of that research and pull on it in order to summarize it and say, this is what the research is saying about U.S. veterans, or this is what the research is saying about homelessness and approaches to working with homelessness. In the literature review, you'll identify some themes of work that's been done. You'll identify maybe areas where research needs to be done. You'll identify whether or not other people have looked at your subject matter, whether or not they've identified positives or negatives of the approach that you're thinking about taking in dealing with your problem. The literature review has to include at least 10 references, and no more than 3 can be from your class materials. So it really does push you to see what's out there and get a sense of what's already been done and what you're adding to with your own research. Then the final component of this assignment is the community intervention plan. And I think this is the most fun part because here you're getting to imagine what it is that you would do in order to intervene in the community problem that you've identified. So basically you're outlining that problem. First, you're going to provide the theoretical model that you're using to justify the plan. This is in your course materials from earlier in the course. You're going to identify what is the theory that is the foundation for the work that the way that you're going to approach the community. For example, if my community problem is high rates of breast cancer in inner city Baltimore, I might design the activities in my plan based on a feminist theoretical model, where I look at the ways that power is distributed, which is based on the feminist theory, and how that impacts women's health. My activities might center around creating equal access to breast cancer screenings, by pushing local funders to prioritize campaigns to raise awareness to women, ensure that clinics provide free mammograms to uninsured women, hold a briefing with public health officials, and others. You're going to describe at least 5 specific advocacy and organizing activities that you will incorporate into your intervention. There have been a lot of examples provided in both the University of Kansas and other readings from previous weeks in the course that I highly recommend that you go back and review if you're not sure what kinds of advocacy and organizing activities might be possible as you intervene. All of you have selected very different communities and very different problems. So different organizing activities that have been discussed during the course might not work in each of those. So it's important to think about what the most effective way of addressing your community problem would be based on what the needs are that you've presented. So, at least 2 of the 5 advocacy and organizing activities need to be targeted toward the media, local, and state politicians. As I mentioned, all of you have very different community problems that you're addressing. So you're going to need to look at who holds the power in those community issues, and how to address those particular people based on what your community needs are. That might be the media in one community, that might be the governor in one community, that might be, public health officials in another community, that might be the mayor. It might look differently depending on what it is that you're addressing. And so you'll be needing to look at specifically who those people are and how the best way of addressing them is. That leads directly into next week's assignment. So in your community activity list, at least one of those will be the press release and letter to the editor or policy brief that assignment number 4 talks about, where you are addressing a policy issue, you're writing an op-ed, you're writing a brief to an elected official, and also you're calling attention to the media. In assignment number 4, you're going to be doing that assignment. In assignment number 3, which is this week, you will be incorporating it into your advocacy and organizing plan. So finally, a couple of notes on proofreading. The content of all of your papers was very good last week. I think this can be very challenging material to try to wrap your head around, and I think everybody did a really good job of trying to really engage in the material and engage in your projects. But there were a lot of proofreading errors, including punctuation, grammar, citation issues. So I would really, really encourage you to read your papers out loud before you submit them. If it does not make sense to you, it needs to be edited. I know that I mentioned this in the very beginning of the course, but it is important, and it's important to our profession that when we write well. And I know that I sent this out as well, but for this assignment, I will deduct additional points from papers that are not appropriately proofread. So if anybody has any specific questions about that, or if you need additional resources or support, please don't hesitate to let me know. But I just want to be clear that it is an expectation that you proofread your papers and make sure that you're turning in the best work possible in order to reflect you. Hopefully this addresses some of the questions around this week's assignment. If anybody has any specific questions, please email me or send me a message. As I said, if anybody wants to set up a time to talk this week, I'm happy to do that. Just email me in order to schedule, and we can get that set up. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing your papers this week, and have a great week.